Hey guys, and welcome back to another video, again featuring the military laptop, or part of it at least. Now in the last video you noticed that there were some video issues with the laptop, and things have gotten worse. Not only do we have the discoloration that we noticed previously, but we also noticed that the actual text which appears on the screen is totally garbled. For example, Pentium MMX is no longer Pentium MX, but Pentium LX. So that's a bit of an issue. And to make matters worse, sometimes the entire background gets distorted. And when I touch the RAM chips, I can actually see it having an effect on the screen. So as many people already pointed out in the comments of the previous video, it is possible that the RAM chips are the culprit here. But that's not the only issue, because all of a sudden the PSU started to do this. Yep, that doesn't sound normal at all. But first for the video. I decided to take the PCB to my local electronic wizard, who is far more capable at soldering than I am. So what we basically did, or what he basically did, is he reflowed, or he added some solder to the pins of the RAM chips on the PCB here. And on the second RAM chip, we all of a sudden had a small success. Because as soon as we turned on the power supply, we noticed that there wasn't any explosion, which was already good. And we noticed that the screen was absolutely spot on. So there were no issues anymore, no more artifacts, no more discoloring, and everything seemed to work fine. So as I'm moving into the BIOS here, there is absolutely nothing wrong with the screen. Everything is working perfectly. So a big thanks to my friend Gert, who actually fixed this. So the problem all along was probably a bad connection or solder joint on the RAM chips of the video circuit. But luckily all is well again. So I decided to take the computer back to my office, pull up all the components here that we need, including all of the screws, or part of the screws that I removed during the disassembly of the computer. And now we can focus on rebuilding it. In this video, I'm also going to be discussing my plans with it and what I'm going to be doing with it in the future. I'm also going to be covering some of the cards that I haven't covered in a lot of detail in the previous video. And I'm also going to fix this horrible noise coming out of the power supply. So it's probably best to do that first. So I've gone ahead and loosened some of the screws here on the fan of the power supply, just to make sure that it's actually the fan which is making contact with the mesh here. I don't know if that's the correct word in English, but you know, the little thing that covers the power supply fan here. And that was indeed the case. So I'm just going to be using this piece of metal here just to pull it outward so that it doesn't make any contact anymore, and then do a quick test. Now getting the screws back into place wasn't the most convenient job, because everything is so tightly packed in this thing. It's not really one of the best serviceable items. And that seems to be working just fine. So even as I wiggle the power supply fan here, it doesn't make that horrible noise anymore. So that's good. Now a lot of people showed interest in this radio card featuring the Motorola chip, which is actually used for the BAMS integrated combat net radio system used in the Belgium Armed Forces. Now the BAMS connector is soldered directly onto this PCB, so I can imagine that this board was used for a variety of different purposes. Now, I don't have a lot of details, so this is the Motorola chip which is on there, which is the MC68302. We have two Zilog serial communication controllers. We've got some jumpers here, probably used to enable, disable, or set IOs, IRQs. We also have some memory here, 4 chips of 4 megabytes each. We also have this Altera programmable logic device, and it is using a standard ISA connector, so this in theory could also slot into a standard PC. Now in the previous video I also mentioned that the CPU was soldered onto the board, which was obviously not the case as many people pointed out. So there is indeed a socket which is soldered onto the motherboard, and the CPU just sits inside that special socket type. Now the radio module fits inside this connector here, which is basically a standard ISA 16-bit connector. It has the exact same pinout as a regular ISA slot. And the motherboard also has this Yamaha sound chip, the WMF715ES chip. And there's also a header next to it, which is currently not used. And on the back, you can actually see the amplifier chip, which is hooked up to these pins here, which allows you to hook up a speaker, which is something that I'm planning to do in a future video. Now going back to the assembly here, which contains the floppy drive and the PCMCIA PCB, I decided to remove the battery from this assembly here because I don't want to have it spill its guts all over the case here. It also adds a lot of weight to the computer, so I'm just going to be removing it. The battery is no longer working, so I might see if I can find some kind of replacement battery for this, but yeah, for the moment I'm just going to be removing it. So I'm just going to be freeing up this battery connector here. And there you have it. The battery removed from the assembly. Nickel cadmium, 24 volts, 3000 milliamp hours. Now, next thing would be the easy part, or so I thought. I had a compact flash card which was provided to me by the original owner, which was this 8 gigabyte compact flash card, and it already contained a version of Windows 98. Unfortunately, it was in Chinese, and my Chinese is pretty rusty, so instead of learning Chinese, I decided to install the English version of Windows 98. But in my enthusiasm, I forgot to delete the old version of Windows 98, which was already on the compact flash, leading me to this Microsoft registry checker, attempting to repair the existing Windows installation. And because it has totally different language settings and character sets, it is impossible to replace this version of Windows 98. Now, what's going to follow now is a series of unfortunate events. In a large extent due to my own stupidity, I decided to move the existing Windows folder out of the way into a WinOld folder, only to find out that then my move command no longer worked to move the program files folder out of the way. And the fact that you need to go into the WinOld command folder to move an existing program files folder out of the way should be enough of a hint that all of this is a really bad idea. But I decided to go for it. And at first everything appeared to be working well. I was able to install Windows 98 into a new Windows folder. Windows did its usual thing. The only thing that I did found a little bit strange is that it pre-filled the computer name, workgroup, and description with some weird characters, probably Chinese characters that this version doesn't seem to interpret very well. But here I was feeling pretty good about myself, only to find out that at 58%, the following error popped up. Again, not to worry, I thought. Reinstalling Windows 98 on this hard drive without formatting at first was probably a stupid move. So let's go ahead and format the compact flash card and do a Windows 98 installation on a freshly formatted compact flash card. Nothing on here except for the Win98 setup files. So let's launch the setup program and go through the installation. And here I thought that everything was going to go well until again an error popped up. File allocation tables on this drive do not match. ScanDisk has determined that copy 1 is the best copy. Seriously, didn't I just format this compact flash card so there are already errors with the file allocation tables? So yeah, that sounds a bit fishy. But here we have Microsoft ScanDisk fixing the file allocation tables, so I assumed that everything would go smooth from now on. But it didn't, because before it even started copying files, I got the following error. Corrupt setup files. Okay, so let's do an fdisk. Let's repartition the entire thing. Perhaps it was partitioned in a different computer, I don't know. That's also not good. So let's boot from a floppy drive and format the drive again. So surely this must work, right? Didn't. Again, a setup file error. Now at that time you start to go into panic mode and you start to do erratic things. So let's go ahead and try a different hard drive setup in the computer BIOS, because it does offer us 3 different modes of operation here. So let's pick the normal mode. So let's see. Setup file error again. Perhaps it's the computer RAM which is acting up. So let's do a Mem Test. Let's boot from a Mem Test 86 floppy and see if there are any errors. And there aren't any. Perhaps it's the compact flash card itself. Perhaps that has gone bad somehow. Obviously you can't see much on the compact flash card physically, but let's try a different one. So I have this compact flash to SD card adapter, which I'm going to be using here. And somewhat to my surprise, I was able to finish the Windows 98 setup using this new compact flash card, or compact flash adapter to be precise. So I'm guessing that there is something wrong with the original compact flash card that was provided to me. Perhaps it has gone bad. I have had my fair share of issues with these compact flash cards in the past. I don't particularly recall them as being the most stable storage solution on these old computers. I think they work best in cameras where they are meant to be used. I've always thought of it's kind of a hack to use these kind of IDE to compact flash card adapter, but a lot of people seem to like them, and I do get the fact that it's a lot easier to get files onto these old computers using these compact flash cards, but I haven't had the best of luck with it. But hopefully with this one my odds will change, because I was able to install Windows 98 on it, so that's pretty good. Notice the little speaker icon next to the clock on the bottom right corner. So there seems to be a sound driver installed during the Windows setup program. So let's check the computer properties, go into Device Manager and see what Windows 98 has detected. And it has detected our Chips and Technologies display adapter, our Intel Pro PCI network adapter. It has found our Cirrus Logic PCMCIA chips, the Yamaha OPL3 sound chip, the SCSI drivers. So yeah, everything seems to be installed just fine. So let's up the resolution a little bit. See if it will do 800 by 600. Let's use 16-bit colors. Never really understood why Windows would need to restart in order to change your resolution, but obviously it gives us the option not to do so, which is pretty cool. And we can bump the resolution all the way up to 1024 by 768. I do have this attached to an external LCD panel at the moment, so I can even bump the resolution higher, but I have the impression that this will be the maximum resolution of the LCD. But yeah, I'm super psyched to have the display issues worked out. I'm thrilled to have Windows 98 installed on this laptop. I have lots of plans with it, actually. I want to get the sound up and running. I want to get some Wi-Fi going on, check the Ethernet connector, perhaps play some retro games on this machine. But we first need to get this looking like a laptop again, so let's start the assembly process. So I'm going to be speeding up this footage a little bit because there are like a million screws to screw inside the various components. So I'm going to start with the power supply, making sure that everything is nice and tight. There's also this LDO here, which is attached to the power supply, which is used to drive power to the display. Let's attach the power supply into the case. Requires a little bit of fiddling. Let's attach the main board to its caddy here so that it can slide into the case using this rail-based mechanism. So here we can see it sliding into the case. There are a couple of connectors that we need to hook up to the top PCB, which is probably for the LCD and for some of the LEDs which are on the LCD. So there are 3 connectors in total that we need to hook up here. And there's also this power connector coming from the power supply that we need to hook up here. So, smoke test, let's turn on the machine. And we have power. And the LCD panel also seems to be working, as well as the LEDs which are on that top panel here, which is really nice. So this is the connector which is hooked up to the PC speaker. So let's hook that one up. We'll also connect the chassis fan here. The floppy drive is using this flat cable here, which is really annoying to get on there because it's a very short and delicate cable. I'm also going to be adding the IDE cable for my IDE to compact flash adapter. And then we can put the entire assembly into the case really gently. There are 2 sets of cables which needs to be added here to the PCMCIA daughter board, which then hooks up to the motherboard. And I know I need to find a caddy for this IDE to compact flash adapter. For the moment, I'm just using the packaging of my SD card. I'm also going to be hooking up the display, which I think was primarily used to read out the battery voltage, so I'm not really sure what's going to be on display here. But now that we have something which more and more resembles an actual laptop, let's see if it will now boot and see if everything is working. And it boots into Windows just fine. It finds all of the hardware, so everything is looking good. So yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with how this turned out. We can actually start using the laptop now. We have Windows installed, so that provides us with a pretty good baseline. Other stuff that I want to do is see if I can hook up a sound speaker system to it. So it does have the Yamaha sound chip and the audio amplifier, so that's good. I want to get this computer on the network, so I'm going to be using the Intel Pro Ethernet adapter for that. I also want to see if I can replace the current modem card with a Wi-Fi PCMCIe card. Perhaps run some benchmarks and install some software and games on it. Using the trackball does require some getting used to, but it gives it a nice extra touch to this laptop. So that's it for now. I hope you'll join me in the fourth and probably final part in this series, which should drop fairly soon. So take care everybody, stay healthy, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.